Flex Tape's powerful adhesive hold the boat together, but it creates a super strong watertight seal, so the inside is completely dry. Yeah, doggy!
Hey guys, Phil Swift here. Wait a minute, it's Mr. Turner here. We're looking at square and cube root equations. So as always, when we're solving equations, we want to find out what x is. And in this first equation here, we have x squared equals 36. So we need to get the x by itself. We always, as always, do the opposite to get it by itself. And the opposite of squared is the square root. Boy, that's terrible, but that is square root. And if we do it to one side, we have to do it to the other. Let's see if that'll work. And once we square root that, we bring this down, and that will be just x. And the square root of 6, again, the square of a number is two numbers multiplied by themselves. They're the same number. So we know that 6 times 6 equals 36. So the square root of 36 is 6. And that is solved. Okay? Now let's look if you have a little more stuff to deal with. We have x squared minus 4 equals 0. Well, okay, we're going to do this just like we always have. We got to work our way back to the x. So we have the negative 4 here, which we need to get rid of. So we're going to add 4 to this side. And if we do it to this side, we have to do it to this side. So now we bring this down. We have x squared equals 4. Okay? Now we need to get rid of the squared because we just need to get to x. And again, the opposite of squared is the square root. So we'll square root this side, and we will square root this side, and this comes down to just x, and the square root of 4 is 2, because 2 times 2 equals 4, and that's our answer. Okay, now we remember how we did the distributive property, but again, we can still do the same procedures if we have things in parentheses. Okay, so let's start off like we usually do. This is our big old mess, so let's not do that just yet. Let's start with here. We can add 4 to both sides, and then that gives us x plus 3 squared equals 4. Now, as always, we want to get rid of the squared. We just want to get to what's in here so we can work our way back to the x in the parentheses here. So if it's squared, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to use the square root. So let's square root this whole thing. And if we do it to one side, once again, we have to do it to the other side. So what we're going to do is this will cancel all that out and just give us the x plus 3, which we like, equals the square root of 4. And the square root of 4 we know is 2 times 2, which is just 2. Okay? So now to finish, to get to x, we have we'll subtract 3 here, and if we do it one side, we have to do it the other. That'll bring our x down. X equals -1, and we're complete. So now that was square roots. Now what happens if we do cube roots? Cube root means same thing as the square root, except you have to do it 3 times instead of 2 times. So we need a number that multiplied by itself 3 times will give us 64. And if we just happen to know this, that 4 times 4 times 4. 4 times 4 equals 16, and 16 times 4 equals 64. And that's how we get that 64. So the cube root of 64 is just 4. Okay, we can do that with equations as well. Let's say we have a cube root. This one's a little longer than you'll probably ever do, but I just want you to see that the procedure is the same in anything we do. So we're going to leave this whole thing as kind of a big mess, right? So we're going to come back to that. Let's just do what we can do. Let's get rid of the -2. And we do the additive inverse property, which means we do it to one side, we have to do it to the other. And that gives us the square root of x squared plus 4 equals 2. And that's cubed. Okay? So as we said before, we always do the opposite. So this is a square root, if this is the cube root, of x squared plus 4, well, let's cube it. Let's put a big old 3 up there. And then if we do it to one side, we have to do it to the other side. And that's going to get rid of everything in the square root. And we have x squared plus 4 equals 2 cubed, which is 2 times 2 times 2. And 2 times 2 is 4, and then times 2 is 8. So now we have 8 on this side, okay? So now we can take our 4 over again. We're going to subtract 4 from both sides, working our way back to the x, and that gives us x squared equals 4. Once again, to get x by itself, we will square root it to get rid of it, because that's squared, so we do the opposite, square root. And the square root of 4 we know is 2 times 2, and x equals 2. Alright guys, as always, make sure and ask for help. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. And as always, do your homework.
Imagine everything you can do with the power of
Squares and cube roots.